I will be brief because I recognise people want to ask questions, and I've already learned one lesson in life. I've already learned tonight is don't follow a great raconteur like Gordon Burns, because you're bound to be boring compared to him. Just to say, by way of my background, I recognise a couple of students, past and present, in the audience. But I've worked with Sinn Féin, the SDLP, the IRA, both Provo and briefly dissent on various projects, the DUP, the UUP, the Orange Order. In fact, I spent most of the last 10 years working on the unionist side. If you told me when I was a Catholic altar boy that I'd spend a decade of my working life working with the DUP, UUP and Orange Order, I probably wouldn't have believed you. Probably, I mean, I can't match Gordon. I can't remotely match Gordon for stories, but I have been blindfolded and meeting the South Armagh unit who brought you the Manchester bombing and the Canary Wharf bombing as part of a project we did on Republican and Loyalist former prisoners, and also been driven around in different cars, again blindfolded in Lurgan, meeting distant Republicans. I think that the one to pick up on what Gordon said, what I want to do very briefly is just bring it up to date and look at what is going to happen now in terms of Northern Ireland, in terms of Brexit, and whether Boris Johnson is going to be able to kick what he apparently agreed to into touch at all. Just picking up on what Gordon said, though, because obviously Gordon's talk was about the Troubles, is we should never be complacent. There's a lot at stake here, because even though the level of violence is a mere fraction of what it was during the Troubles, if you look at the statistics, the security situation statistics from the police service in Northern Ireland, they are quite sobering. I went through them today, double-checked them to make sure. So let's take the last 15 years. The Good Friday Agreement is now 22 years old. But if you look at the last 15 years, the PSNI has recorded almost 20,000 sectarian incidents. There's been 944 shootings, 659 bombings, 1,116 people injured as a result of paramilitary violence, 39 deaths, and more than 2,500 arrests under anti-terrorism legislation relating to Northern Ireland. And still 20% of MI5 activity relates to Northern Ireland. So it's a peace, but in some ways it's a cold peace, and in some ways it has been marked by episodic violence. Again, I don't want to overstate it. This is nothing like the experiences that Gordon encountered, but the peace should not be taken for granted. That's the first point to make, and that really leads into the brief points that I want to make about Brexit, because what was clear in terms of the Brexit referendum was that the big problem would be, if there was going to be a vote for Brexit, the big problem would be Northern Ireland. To her credit, Theresa May, at the time, Theresa May, en route to becoming Prime Minister as a consequence of David Cameron falling on his sword after that referendum, the ill-judged calling of the referendum, Theresa May did warn, to her credit, one of the very few voices, did say during the referendum campaign itself, what will happen to this border if one side is out of the EU and the other remains within it, still one of the most politically sensitive borders in the world. So the question was there, but it remained unanswered during the referendum. But it was divisive during the referendum. That's not to say that everyone in Northern Ireland rushed out to the polls. Turnout was not great, but if you look at how Northern Ireland voted, you see the extent of division. You see how things have got worse. 85% of Catholics voted to remain in the EU, compared to only 41% of Protestants. So as if Northern Ireland didn't have enough in terms of divides, the Brexit referendum exacerbated the divide. And those divides on some measures have healed. When you ask the question, have community relations improved? Most people in Northern Ireland will say yes over the last 10 years. But if you actually look, I've done the last 4 Northern Ireland general election surveys, the percentage of Catholics who admit, at least, to voting DUP and UUP in those surveys stands at 0%. It could hardly be more emphatic. And the percentage of Protestants who say they voted Sinn Féin or SDLP at the last election was a mere 1%. And they probably misread the survey anyway. So you see the starkness of these continuing divisions, and Brexit has in many ways exacerbated those divisions. And there wasn't in Northern Ireland the institutional mechanisms to deal with those divisions, because not long after the Brexit referendum, and partly, but not only as a consequence of Brexit, the Assembly collapsed. It collapsed, and it collapsed for 3 years. And if you look at the Northern Ireland Assembly, I'm the first to laud the Good Friday Agreement, one of the greatest peace deals we've ever seen anywhere around the world. But in terms of the institutional architecture produced by it, it has been hit and miss because the Northern Ireland Assembly has been suspended for almost 40% of the time. No one has lost a full day's salary, it should be said, as a consequence of it not sitting. So it's nice work if you can get it, but it's been an insecure institution. It's not been able to deal with it. That's not to say that the Scottish Parliament or the Welsh Assembly has been able to deal with, necessarily with Brexit either, but it's been a problem, I think, within Northern Ireland. And essentially the issue that Boris Johnson is dealing with in respect to Northern Ireland is unchanged from what Theresa May was dealing with. Theresa May had the backstop, the famous backstop. If you want to read all about it, there's two books I can recommend. Read Fergal Cochrane's Breaking Peace, deals very, very well with the saga of Theresa May's backstop and how Boris Johnson tried to replace it. Or £16.99, the Britain Votes, edited by yours truly. Shameless, everyone got that. Britain Votes, the story of the last general election, where we look at all the wrangling in Parliament between 2017 and 2019. But the issues are unchanged. Theresa May had a backstop in which, if there was not a comprehensive deal between the EU and the UK over Northern Ireland, then Northern Ireland would remain uniquely aligned to the European Union. Boris Johnson denounced Theresa May for that persistently. I was there. Those who think academics don't have a tough life, I have to do all the rounds of Northern Ireland Party conferences. I've lost many a Saturday having to do Northern Ireland Party conferences, sit through them. And I was there at the conference, the DUP conference in 2018, when Boris Johnson told the DUP no Conservative Prime Minister could or should sign up to a deal that so uniquely aligns Northern Ireland to the EU in the way that Theresa May had done. Within a year of that conference, almost a year to the day, he did the deal with Leo Varadkar, and then more broadly with the EU, which actually turned a backstop into a front stop, which uniquely aligns now Northern Ireland to the EU in terms of the EU single market. Northern Ireland remains part of it, and to all intents and purposes, it's a customs deal with the EU. It's a Northern Ireland stays part of the EU customs union. So basically, Boris Johnson signed up to exactly what he said he would never sign up to should he be Prime Minister. He's the first politician to launch a leadership bid at someone else's party conference. That's effectively what Boris Johnson was doing that day at the DUP conference, and very successfully was too. And there were many reasons for this backstop that became the front stop, because essentially, as I say, the issues are unchanged. If you want a seamless north-south border, and everyone says they do, no one says they want friction in terms of the border going between Newry and Dundalk. No one wants a hardening of that border. Then there's got to be friction somewhere, because the EU is going to protect its single market. So the friction then becomes the Liverpool to Larne trade, the east-west border. And that conundrum can't really be fully solved to everyone's satisfaction. It cannot be, because Unionists obviously don't like friction between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They regard Northern Ireland as an integral part of the United Kingdom. So something has to give. And in the end, Boris Johnson decided it would be the DUP that would give. So the mystery then is, well, why is he now trying to unpack some of what he agreed last year via the UK Internal Market Bill that is currently going through Parliament? There's two theories. One is he didn't understand what he signed. I think that's implausible. The second is that he genuinely thought that he could play the nuclear option of threatening to tear up an agreement, or at least amend an agreement, to get concessions from the EU. And I'm very much in the second camp. I think that's what the strategy is here. I think where the strategy will go wrong for Boris Johnson in respect to Northern Ireland is I don't think he will get what he wants through the House of Lords. I don't see the Internal Market Bill going through, certainly not in an unamended form, through the House of Lords. And in that case, it's an obvious weakness for him. But ultimately, all these issues relating to the border could and should have been thought through before the Brexit referendum. Ever since then, we've wasted an awful lot of time. The Conservatives obviously impaired by the fact they had to do business with the DUP. We've wasted an awful lot of time when it was obvious what was going to have to happen, that there would have to be some friction, some checks on goods going from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, and Northern Ireland remaining quite distinctly aligned to the EU. I actually think that's good for Northern Ireland. I mean, it's quite good. They will have a great trading relationship still with the rest of the UK, where most of the trade is done, and they will have great access to the rest of the European Union. And I don't think it's necessarily, which is the big unionist fear, that it's the slippery slope to United Ireland. the polling evidence is far from clear that there's been a shift towards support for United Ireland. The percentage of people voting for nationalist parties at the last general election in Northern Ireland was virtually unchanged. Hasn't gone up, in fact, over the last 2 decades much. The unionist vote has fallen, but the big shift in Northern Ireland politics has actually been the growth of the political centre, those who say they are neither unionist nor nationalist. That was at 40%, at least 40% of people claiming that they were neither unionist or nationalist at the last election, not necessarily reflected in a vote for centre parties. So there's no certainty that putting Northern Ireland closer to the Irish Republic economically, which it does, it is creating an economic United Ireland, will lead to a constitutional change. It may do, but it's not guaranteed. So perhaps unionist fears are possibly overblown. That's where I'll leave it. That's, it's far more interesting to hear Gordon's tales of the past than all the problems of a UK internal market bill. But I actually think the future for Northern Ireland is relatively bright, whether it be continue as a separate entity, becomes a part of a United Ireland. And the good thing about the Good Friday Agreement, just to finish off, is that it does deal with that issue, because it does say that there can be a border poll. The difficulty with the Good Friday Agreement in that respect is that it says that a border poll can be called if the Secretary of State thinks that opinion has changed as to whether there should be a United Ireland. But there's no criteria given as to how the Secretary of State decides that. And if you look at university polls, which are face-to-face, remember the days we could be face-to-face, they suggest there's not been much of a shift to United Ireland. Online surveys suggest there has been a substantial shift towards support for United Ireland. So how does the Secretary of State decide when is the moment to press the border poll button? But I think in terms of the threat to the UK, that is much more from Scotland at present than it is from Northern Ireland. If Scotland goes, however, then you can bet your life there will be a border poll following very quickly, I think, in respect of Northern Ireland. Thanks very much.